back to what you were just saying, Jordan, if you are not pausing your day to focus on, what do we always say? We always say the mechanic drives the worst car, right? Like, take care of yourself. Put the mask on yourself before you put it on anyone else, and you'll end up finding that your business goes a lot further. You'll help and change a lot of people's lives a lot more consistently. You'll bring a lot more sustainability to your business. And I don't know if you found this, Jordan, but really scheduling and implementing these things brings a lot of peace. When you're in the service industry, literally, you're providing a service to people, right? So, I mean, emphasizing things like communication is sometimes essential, right? From a project management perspective, if you're not talking to your clients, if you're not keeping them up to date where your project's at, if you're not giving them things like Gantt charts or documentation to help them, it's only going to cause anxieties.
So many decisions that so many companies make. It's like, nope, sorry, that's our policy. I hate hearing that. I absolutely hate as a consumer. What my customers feel like if constantly it's just policy this, policy that, what's in it for me as the business? No, they want to know what's in it for me as a consumer. So
welcome back to the Challengtunity podcast. I'm Chris Lawson, and as usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan Wolf, who thinks every dog that is less than 50 pounds is a cat. Jordan, how are you doing today?
Well, that is true, because only dogs are large dogs, but in the comments below, I just started a fire. Yeah, it's good to be here. I am a little, got a bit of a head cold, so if I sound a little off, that's nature doing its thing through my body, but looking forward to our conversations today.
But you look good, so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And you realize your comment didn't just add a bunch of comments. We probably lost 50% of our viewership.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
All those small dog / cat people.
Well, I mean, I have a medium-sized dog who is just around that 50-pound mark. So I don't know. Depends on how much he eats that day. He'd be a cat or not.
Yes.
Well, hey, Jordan, we got an interesting show today. We have some pretty interesting topics. I mean, obviously, we want to talk a bit about business modeling. That's something that is, I'd say, more on the business leaders side of the world that we live in, but very, very relevant, I think, on the marketing and sales side as well. And, frankly, it ties into operational excellence. We'll be talking a bit about that. We have a guest going to be joining us later. Matt Rudolph is, I don't know, he's kind of a bit of everything. He's a bit of operations, a lot of sales, a lot of process. He kind of takes a bit of an engineered approach to automations and things in his business. So Matt Rudolph, who will be joining us later, is going to be touching on a ton of the topics that we're going to be talking about at the beginning of our session. So I know it's an area he's passionate about, and probably an area that we won't be able to get him to shut up about. So, hold back your questions, Jordan. We'll just let him roll.
Excellent. We'll run out of videotape, right? Is that how these things work? Still on videotape?
We're doing everything on tape. Yeah. Well, let's dive right into it. Before we started, putting together the topics for today, I actually went the opposite direction as we normally do, and I actually had a real cool dinner with Matt, and we just started getting on this, this rant about, problems that we're seeing around the market and problems that we're seeing in our own businesses and how we've solved some of them. And it kind of just got us into this topic of operational excellence, which maybe sounds fancy, but it's really simple. I think it's just as simple as, having a spirit of excellence with everything that you do. But, Jordan, I'd like to kind of throw it over to you. Like, how do you view operational excellence? Is it something that is just a one-off topic when you set up a business, or is it something that is, you evolve it over time? Like, where's your stance on it?
Well, I think over time, this is something you have to continue to work on, whether it's a small business, a large business, international, huge corporation. You're always working between your model and a customer. You're trying to solve a problem, but the problem you started solving on day one probably isn't the problem you're solving on day 1000. And needs and market that you're competing in is always constantly changing. So how you approach those challenges is fluid in itself. Then there's just improvement. So making changes over time makes you better, makes you more competitive, makes you, a better value for your customer. There's lots of different models for doing this. I'm sure we'll talk about some of them, like lean, a little bit later. But this is a big part of what it is to manage a business or manage a department.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you don't start with the idea of, I want to have operational excellence. You're usually starting with a goal and ambition, whether it be, trying to focus on your attrition rates or, trying to increase revenue or, whatever the case might be. But those goals start with an overall business model. Obviously, you're seeing that there is a challenge in the market, a problem that you need to solve, a product maybe that's going to, flip the world upside down. Maybe you're inventing the television, who knows, or electricity. But, one of the areas that I've kind of always felt in the service industry that has had a massive impact in our business is streamlining process. And streamlining process can be very different for every business. I know for us, in a service-based agency model, streamlining process can be as simple as automating tasks that are mundane or come up frequently. Automating those can save you a ton of time, let alone things like eliminating roadblocks or bottlenecks, giving all the attention that you need there. But for us, workflows have been a very important part, whether it's from project management, your sales process. And, back to what you were talking about a moment ago, Jordan, is it's not just fixing them and leaving them. It's also about refining them, touching base on them, reporting or measuring them, and making iterative changes and seeing where those go, and then making iterative changes to that, next step.
Yeah, and it's also important to balance out. It's really easy to fall into the trap. Like if you just view business as a money machine that, you focus all your effort on making it more, increase my margin, decrease my cost, make more money. While that's great, and you should be encouraging that, money's, part of running a business. Otherwise we wouldn't do it. But the other side to it is adding value, being more effective, being competitively a better product than everything else that's out there on the market. So if you only focus on that other side, you eventually lose that other battle. In like our business, we've focused a lot on not just the steps that take to deliver our service, but also the people that are needed to do that. So, do you have specialists? Do you have generalists? Do you have people here or there?
Yeah.
What part of the process do they add their value in, and to what degree?
Well, I think it's important that you're talking about people because, when you're in the service industry, literally you're providing a service to people, right? So, emphasizing things like communication is sometimes essential, right? From a project management perspective, if you're not talking to your clients, if you're not keeping them up to date where your project's at, if you're not giving them things like Gantt charts or documentation to help them, it's only going to cause anxieties. It's only going to cause the problem that they have to grow. We often say, when there's a bee in the bonnet with a client, getting that bee to disappear doesn't mean that you'll never have it come back, right? It's only going to take one more problem to come up once again down the road for that bee to come back and, for that client to remember the painful experience that they had before. So, communication, I think in the service industry is very, very important for operational, excellence. But, forget the client side, like internally, from management down or staff up or, horizontally. Like Jordan, you can talk about this more than anything. Collaborative work, in the service industry is also very important and a big part of operational excellence.
Yeah, obviously we have some of our staff in an office. So having people overhear conversations and be part of that process is one aspect with that kind of organic communication. But there are real points where you need to, set into your process at stage X. You do, steps 1, 2, 3 together with this specialist or that specialist to encourage like both collateral value between the two individuals, but also moving that value back across to the customer at key points. internal communication is often in the service of external to some degree. Like we do talk about, when we're delivering value in different ways, or we're trying to refine our process, sometimes we get really clever about it, and we can be really efficient by doing something, quickly, or finding a software solution to a problem. If the customer doesn't see that or is not aware of it, then is it really value that's been added at that point? So there's a bit of like stagecraft communication as well, making sure that they're seeing the things that are being done, even if that's not operationally necessary to make it work. And that can be true within, your own team networks within a company too. So you want to see, the people around you are doing good work, and you want to see that value progress through the company. And so if they've found a way to save time or be more efficient, that it's important to even kind of distribute that through the company, so the company across, other people doing similar jobs might benefit from that in the same way, and you just become much more efficient or effective as a company.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately at the end of that process, you're going to be providing that end service, which it could be as simple as, I don't know, being a plumber and fixing a pipe, or it could be you're providing an actual service. In the case of us, we're providing, I don't know, results through an ad or organic search, or producing a website or an app, or whatever the case might be. Optics are everything. So if the end result is great or not, if they can enjoy that process throughout, you're only going to have better retention. And most likely, those individuals will be promoters of your brand as opposed to retractors, or even just neutral. But talking about that end result, everybody wants to produce quality, right? But we don't always implement a quality assurance, whether it be a stamp of of quality, or a process. Those standards can be very, very, very important throughout the entire organization, or ultimately to the end client. Jordan, what's your take on, quality assurance and culture? You ever thought of that?
I think there's a part of this that you'll probably have more insight, because basically you are what people say you are, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're doing great things but nobody knows about it, and nobody is communicating about it, then you're not really doing anything that anyone else can see. So it's like, the field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. That's not true in marketing, and it's not true in business either. You do need to be able to build around what you do some sort of visibility, whether that's recognizing through good work reviews, or being visible in the sense of your social media presence and how people communicate with you externally, or of you externally. And then of course, internally, you've got, hiring culture. You've got all these types of things that play a role, and your operational focus and ability to deliver quality is kind of separate from that. It does need to be kind of reinforced, and make sure that that's part of what you're paying attention to and encouraging. There's more technical elements to this that get into, how you measure these things in the long term, like NPS, et cetera. Maybe you can kind of get more into that side.
Ooh, the world of NPS, Net Promoter Score. Typically you see NPS, in the world of things like IT, or in any kind of industry where, the second that, a cycle has been completed, they're asking you how you did, whether it be a 1 through 10 rating, or a red, yellow, or green happy face. We've all seen that stuff. But the whole idea there is to understand how that individual, how they think of you, what they think of you, how they'd rate you. You want people to be promoters of your brand instead of retractors of your brand. And I think it does tie back into that culture topic we were just bringing, because I think everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to produce something they're proud of. And if you have quality assurance when it comes to that product, that service, the standards that you've set as a company, your staff, your team, your company should be proud of that. That pride, in a positive way, I think also turns into, what you're putting into your corporate culture collectively. It's more of a positive vibe in the office. And then it ultimately turns into your team producing a great product, whether it be the content writing that they're producing or whatever. And then eventually turns into a client that is fantastically happy with you, if that's the right way to say that. So, NPS is an important way of, understanding where those individuals are at. Are they happy? Are they neutral? Where are they at? Are they on the verge of firing you or choosing another solution? You can be a little bit more proactive with your attrition. with NPS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is something that there's a bit of a science to it, and you do have to force into place. There is many situations I've seen great, like phenomenally run companies that are operationally excellent. They're doing all the right things, but they just haven't built that culture for whatever reason to, ask for reviews or to engage outside of that experience. So the customer leaves going, "Oh, that was great," but they're not really encouraged to go that extra step. And unfortunately, we're human beings. We're all a little bit, lazy to some degree. Now, fortunately, if you do a great job, pushing somebody to give you a review or encouraging them to, communicate externally about their great experience, it's easier than if a company has a bad experience with a customer and making them do the same. They're not going to. So, it's not an excuse not to do good work, but it is definitely something you need to encourage to happen in your culture.
Right. And I mean, operational excellence, I think, is a very broad topic, and we could do an entire podcast on this topic. I mean, we could write a white paper on it, but how does that tie into business modeling? I mean, does one come before the other? Is it congruent? Do you work on both simultaneously?
Well, operational excellence is kind of something you move into as you've broken into a market. So business modeling obviously starts very broad with making sure that you have a problem to solve, that you have the capability to solve it, and that you have a market that's willing to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So if you have those three things, then you've pretty much got the building blocks to start running a business. Then it's about refinement. And that's where we get back to things like operational excellence or, process refinements, process engineering. Perhaps we'll talk about that. But I mean, if you're missing any of those other things, like, you can be working all day and night on producing an amazing service for a problem that doesn't need to be solved. You can have an amazing, experience that you have with customers, but they're not willing to pay for it. Either of those things can break this discipline altogether. So you do have to have those fundamentals kind of taken care of before you can really start to focus on operational excellence. That's where business modeling comes in.
Yeah. Like, I know the big one for us is, at what point do you hire another employee, right? Your capacity to produce a service obviously is impacting your profitability. It's impacting, your scalability. And also you're managing burnout, with your staff, which impacts the quality of work, which impacts, how happy your clients are with you. So, capacity and all those types of things are very much in that world. I'm glad you mentioned the topic of process engineering, though, Jordan, because I think, obviously there's process engineers as, it's an actual business model, but taking that lens and applying it to how you refine the large scale or even the small scale items within your business, within your marketing department or your business development team, or when you're deciding every year as to what softwares you're implementing, like that lens of process engineering can do a lot of things. It can save you money. It can help your business scale. There's so many layers to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is just the way of thinking that kind of hits me the right way. Hits me right in the hearts.
You have feelings?
I have, multiple feelings, all of the feelings, a box of feelings. But process engineering is, like you said, it's an actual discipline. It's a whole field of study in universities, and traditionally, it's been more associated with things like, starting a factory or building a product through machinery, things like that. But when you apply some of the broader fundamentals of that, like measurability, understanding the connection between one thing and another, and really, really getting down to that long-term refinement, those are things that can be applied to business models, to service operations or product development. That's where it comes back to the operational excellence side of our conversation. So process engineering is just a mindset, I guess, or a discipline you should follow if that's the way you want to view things. As a business ourselves, that's been kind of pretty fundamental to getting down to some of the reasons we do what we do, and the ways that we've been able to create more value for our customers is by, slowly, iteratively over time, paying attention to those points where there might be too much friction, or where there might be something that could be done more efficiently or effectively if another individual or was moved into a different part of the process. All those questions start kind of unraveling from that approach.
Yeah, and maybe to kind of create a real life example of what we do with that can kind of be looked upon in our sales cycle. Originally, when we kind of created a sales cycle because we wanted to kind of measure where the drop-off was happening, we had a very simple process. It was as simple as talk to the prospect, send them a proposal, walk through the proposal, and follow up on the signature. It was kind of that simple. But we learned throughout that process that there was way more steps that needed to be taken in order to have a successful pipeline. So it was talking to that individual, sending them a follow-up email, sending them another email in a few days, letting them know what was coming, sending them the proposal, sending them the meeting invite to walk through it, so on and so forth. And all those little tiny steps added up into maybe a 12-step process that, ensured that close rates were high. But more than anything, it was managing people. It was helping the individual at the other end feel taken care of. It was there to ensure that we understood where they were at in that cycle. And more than anything, as a business development department, we were able to measure where the drop-offs were, where the conversion rates or the stages of going to the next phase were being hindered, removing those roadblocks. And we were able to look at new softwares. We were able to make decisions with staffing. We were able to do all these different things just because we broke down the pipeline, we like to call it, into more steps, and we measured it, and it became a lot more efficient, a lot more productive.
And it's, again, not all about efficiency. Those steps can be interactions, right? They're an opportunity quite often to add value, to improve the knowledge of the customer. So something as simple as booking the next meeting becomes an opportunity to communicate something new to them, or to ask for more clarity, or to give them a link to something that's going to be useful at that point. So those little process improvements iteratively add up to something pretty significant where, in the end, if you do enough of them, compare it to anybody else that hasn't done even a fraction of that, and you're in a whole other ball game as far as how the customer perceives you.
Well, and even having that lens of process engineering makes you start asking the question, like, how can we actually implement that lens? Do I have a CRM? That, how many businesses do we talk to where they don't even have that, right? Let alone how are they measuring the 11th of the 12th step? So, making sure that you're looking at it through that lens will start, will enable you to start seeing other areas of the business that maybe red flags are popping up that you never saw before because the lens you were looking at was a little bit, pink, green, or whatever that lens was.
Yeah, I've always kind of looked at it like flipping over rocks just to see what's underneath sometimes. Even when you're first starting a business, the tendency, especially if you're going into a developed industry, like you're going to be entering a market that already has other players in it, you might have an innovative idea, but you're going into a system that already exists, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of just believing in the Kool-Aid of what everybody else is doing. Sometimes it's worthwhile to go even right back to the beginning, strip it down to the beams and go, okay, well, what is it that we're really doing here? Just because they're doing it one way doesn't mean that that's the right way. So, you have people like Elon Musk, of course, who really focus on things like first principles theory. I like that idea too. That's one way to look at it. But you're really rethinking fundamentals sometimes that can be, if you're able to build a value from the ground and expand from there, it's going to be far more impactful in its breadth of value than if you're, coming in halfway up the chain and adding value at that point.
Yeah, I mean, most industries have been around for a long period of time, right? Unless there was some massive disruptor in the market. Let's look at web development for a very simple topic. It's a commoditized industry. You can go and have a website in 30 minutes for free if you really wanted to. The average Joe can buy a domain and drag and drop a website together. But when you get to the more custom built, enterprise level websites, that process hasn't changed a lot in a number of years. You go through a wireframing phase, you go through a design phase. You might have an industry or an agency that goes, well, we bake in content writing into every project because it's, the biggest cause of delay or whatever. But overall, it's a pretty simple process. But when you take it, like you say, you want to flip over the rocks, we're constantly flipping over the rocks in that process. We're trying to figure out where can we get more value for the customer? How can we be more transparent? How can we take a 12-week process and make it 11? How can we make sure that, the client by the end of the process is absolutely excited to move to the next phase of their marketing mix? I think that lens, the operational excellence kind of lens, I think it's essential in today's market, especially when there's so much innovation happening in the world.
Yeah, and it really gets down to one thing that I'm always balancing being a little frustrated about and passionate and like energized about, is that as a business owner or, a principal, or if you're a CEO of a company, you wake up every morning and you've got a million things in front of you to work on or to put your attention to.
You mean emails?
Yeah, emails, to-do lists, staff calling you up with a random question. You're always, the person that is a go-to for a whole bunch of different subject matters. So, a lot of roads lead to you. So it ends up being very difficult to find the time to focus on these things. And for me personally, if I was able to dedicate 100% of my time on these type of modeling things, process engineering, et cetera, making our business better, that kind of adage of, work on the business, not in the business, that is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. And, someone that I struggle with, Chris, same thing. It's worth the time though. So if I was giving any advice in this, what I have learned over time is it is something you need to kind of schedule in and kind of dedicate time to do this. If you're not going to, it will get eaten up by something else. And these are the things that are going to give you competitive advantage, keep you in the market longer, make you more valued by your customers, make you more money. So those types of, narrowed down 20 minutes here, an hour there, if you can find a morning a week or something, the more the merrier as far as how it's going to exponentially improve everything else you're doing. The trick is, putting all those other distractions or those other secondary priorities to the side for a moment and going, okay, yes, I'll get to you, but this is important. It really, really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's a lot of business leaders that are out there. We've all heard of them. There's books out there like Traction with EOS and Lean and all these things. And, these are business models or things you can apply to your business model that are all there to help you. But back to what you were just saying, Jordan, if you are not pausing your day to focus on, what do we always say? We always say the mechanic drives the worst car, right? Like, take care of yourself. Put the mask on yourself before you put it on anyone else. And you'll end up finding that your business goes a lot further. You'll help and change a lot of people's lives a lot more consistently. You'll bring a lot more sustainability to your business. And I don't know if you found this, Jordan, but really scheduling and implementing these things brings a lot of peace for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not running around and being frantic and chasing my tail because I'm now able to look down the road a lot further and know what's coming. So yeah, there's the word of the day. Put the mask on yourself first.
I like that as a kind of, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's a pretty clean way of actually addressing that problem or clarifying it. Just to kind of give one other layer on that, as much as I'm encouraging people to go and do this and dedicate time, I do know that the next question that often comes up for a lot of people is, well, I'm not a strategist. I started this business because I was passionate about it. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what the first steps are. To be honest, there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of books you can follow. Like we mentioned earlier, the Lean, as a model you can follow. There's a whole bunch of different ways and methodologies you can get started into this. But I think the best thing is to eliminate any excuses. So step 1, get a pen in your hand. Step 2, put yourself in front of a whiteboard and just wait. Put yourself in an awkward position to just clean your brain out and think of something. There's no wrong answers. If you get this wrong on a whiteboard, just erase it. Try again. Ask better questions. Ask a lot of whys. Why do we do it this way? Oh, we do it this way. Well, why do we do it that way? Well, because of this. Well, why is that? And, you'll find that either you're justifying what you're doing, and in the end, maybe that is the right way to go about it. You can move on to the next problem. Or maybe you'll stumble across something that changes your business completely. And that's why it's worthwhile doing that.
Wise words from Jordan Wolf. I'm curious to hear what Matt has to say about these topics. He's I always joke every time we have our dinners or our lunches because he thinks like an engineer, but he's not one at all. I'm going to ask him if he has a whiteboard and he just stands in front of it, and just sees his own reflection, or if he actually doodles on there. It'd be interesting to see how he kind of, solves these challenges.
Excellent. As long as he uses the right color, right?
That's yeah. Never go into your into a room of whiteboards with your business partner and have the same idea at the same time and expect it to be color coordinated when one person writes just in black. I wonder who did that in this.
Yeah, backstory on that real quick. I know we're eating up time here, but one of the most aggravated arguments we've ever had in front of like the staff in our own collaborative room, which has a glass window, so the rest of our staff on the other side of it watching us.
To be clear,
kind of doing some brainstorming.
It was during lunch and we were all very hungry.
But Chris and I are working away and thinking about, I forget even what problem we were working on, but I was like, aha, and I had a eureka moment. I started writing it down on the board, and Chris was just getting angrier and angrier and going like, you're using the wrong colors, and throwing different colored pen at me. Well,
I had the
whatever.
exact same epiphany at the exact same time, and I turned and I started writing on the board, on the other board, and I looked to my left, and you were doing the exact same thing, and I went, well, we don't both need to write it down, so I erased mine and thought I'll just shout out my opinion, my thoughts as you were doing it, but I like color. I wanted a green and a blue and a red and color coordinate. Yeah, anyways. Nobody cares about this story, but our staff saw us yelling at each other for mom and dad are fighting. So, well,
I'm
on
looking
that
forward
note,
to our guest next.
Yeah, let's throw it over to the interview and see what Matt has to say about color coordinating and whiteboards. Start whenever you want now.
All right, so we're back with our guest, Matt Rudolph. So Matt joins us as a friend of the podcast, hopefully, or soon to be, and he comes from a customer service and sales manager background at Alberta Carpet and Furnace Cleaning, and that's an Alberta-based business where he's spent about 20 years in a variety of roles, working and overseeing a variety of changes in mostly process innovation, things like CRMs or process automations that have helped that business really innovate and grow as a dominant player in the market. So we welcome Matt to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, I know that Chris and yourself know each other a little bit more than I do. We just met off camera here, but Chris and you go a little ways back. So, thanks for joining us on this crazy journey of the Challengtunity podcast. That is I don't know what episode this will be, but it's in the single digits still. So early days.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're pioneering. We're pioneering here. We don't even know what we're doing, but it's working.
Isn't that how you began your last podcast?
No.
Well, earlier Chris and I had an opportunity to talk about a bunch of different topics, and it's fitting that you're coming in having more of a focus on operations and innovation on that side of the business, because that's some of the things we were talking about: operational excellence, business modeling, even how that really starts with what you might need to focus on as a business owner or innovating in a competitive environment. So maybe we'll touch on some of those things from your experience, and that might be a good kind of place to start off. Improving customer experience in a service-based business. So you're in the carpet and furnace cleaning business. That's very, customer service-based. That doesn't get more customer service-based than that. In fact, I think if you were to be stereotypical about a customer service business, that would probably be at the top of the list. So finding ways to innovate and, improve your operational excellence must be both challenging and exciting at the same time. How are some of the ways that you've approached that in the past with this business?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we really like to do is just try and put ourselves into the customer's shoes and think, if I was them, how would I want to be treated? How would I want how would I want my experience to go? And that definitely drives a lot of our decisions in how we just take care of them to make sure that at the end of the day that we've got happy customers, because that's what ultimately we're selling. It's not there's a lot of services out there, like plumbing, for instance. When a plumber cleans out the drains at your home and leaves, it's like, yeah, I hope I don't have to see you again. You didn't want to have to spend that money. We're a feel-good service, so the experience matters that much more, because people don't have to get this done. It's something they go, I want to do this to take care of my home, for my health, for just general the feeling of my dwelling, and I feel that we ultimately sell happiness because that's that feeling you get. You like when you get in your car after you've cleaned it, right? It feels so good. And same thing when you come home from, and then the carpets are freshly cleaned or the furnace. It feels great. So
I'm glad you kind of approached that subject that way, because I think there's a lot of businesses that struggle with the fundamental value that they provide for a customer. So, I use the example sometimes when we're consulting for clients of, what's the value is the question, but the way they might approach that is like, well, I don't know, I sell shoes, I produce shoes, the shoes is the value. But, we look at models like Walmart. Well, they sell products, sure, but their value is availability of a variety of products at a cheap cost. Those types of things are, subtle changes to how you view business, but they're the things that drive your value over time and your differentiation. So when you're trying to maximize that value, and as you said, like you're more on the positive side of it, you're not problem solving, like putting out a fire, but you are improving someone's life in a lot of ways. How are you approaching maximizing that value over time? Is this something you follow strict, models like lean we were talking about earlier, anything like that?
Lean has absolutely become a big essential part of what we do. And lean is funny. The definition of lean is a set of management practices that improve efficiency and effectiveness by eliminating waste. That, to me, when I read it, it just sounds like a whole bunch of words, and it's like, wow, buzzwords.
Totally.
But Paul Akers, who wrote the book 2-Second Lean, which is just fantastic. I'd highly recommend it to anybody. You can get it for free, even like you can get a PDF copy for free. Just Google Paul Akers 2-Second Lean and you can find it. And it is just what I really like is that he says that lean's about changing your thinking. It's the art of seeing waste. It's the art of seeing waste and changing your thinking. The number of times he says lean thinking, like I have underlined every time I would read lean thinking in the book, because it's not about lean, it's about lean thinking. Yeah. And so we like to think in a lean way and add value. And, what is value? Anything the customer's willing to pay for. Ultimately, what are they willing to pay for? What are they actually buying? What's the value? So many decisions that so many companies make. It's like, nope, sorry, that's our policy. And like, I hate hearing that. I absolutely hate as a consumer. My customers feel like if constantly it's just policy this, policy that, what's in it for me as the business? No, they want to know what's in it for me as a consumer. So, yeah. Is there value? What are they willing to pay for? I mean, there's always certain things like legal requirements and stuff like that just has to be done. But beyond that, just asking the question, does this add value for the customer? Right. It could be as simple as, it could be implementing moving blankets. We like to use moving blankets in the homes to cover the floors. So when our hoses come in there, that we're taking care of their home. Are they willing to pay for that or not, right? So thinking about those things in all the different decisions that we make, I think is hugely important.
Well, I think, when we talk about the service industry too, we forget that a lot of the time we're talking about, return business, and usually it's not a second time, it's a third, a fourth. We're actually talking about a lifetime value. So, the small little things where you're making sure that, although you're cleaning the carpets for them, you're not damaging, the baseboards, or, you're not leaving the place with problems. Like we all hear about movers who came in, did their job, but they did it in such a way that damaged, 5 or 6 things they moved. How have you guys, as a service provider, kind of looked at your customer as a return base or repeat customer, looked at their lifetime value, and kind of reverse engineered the actual service that you provide to ensure that they do become a repeat customer?
Well, there's definitely a few things that we've done. One of them being adding those value components I talked about earlier, being blankets, corner guards, something at the door, seal a door. That's one part for sure. The second part is, at the end of the day, we aren't robots. We didn't hire robots. We are humans. We have people who work for us, people who go out and do a fantastic job. And what we really try and instill in the customers is the intent behind what we've done. Do we make mistakes? You bet we do. Do we occasionally bump a wall, damage something? Yeah, that happens. I think one of the biggest measures of a company isn't if they make a mistake or not, because any company that has humans is going to make a mistake. What one of the biggest measures is how they take care of it. Like what do they actually do?
Yeah.
Do they own it? Do they take care of the customer? Or do they just kind of go, nah, no, you know what? Sorry about that. That's and wash their hands of it. I mean, these days you do that kind of thing, and that's a negative Google review. And then what's the cost of that, right? Some people don't
Yeah.
think they don't think of that. I like to talk about whether you're correct or right. Sometimes you're correct about what happened, but you're not right in how you deal with it. So it's like, yeah, sometimes you can be correct as a business, but it's not always the right thing to do. So trying to do the right thing, hugely important to just continually keep the customers coming back so that it's just a service that they can trust.
Wisdom with Matt Rudolph.
Well, I picked up a few things over the years.
We even talked earlier, I think that you mentioned reviews and how important those are. Like we're really talking about his experiences especially in a service-based business, like the customer experience elements, whether they're positive or negative, those are points of either friction or maybe a problem happened. And you do the best you can in the moment to resolve that in the most mutually beneficial way, in a way that's honest, like you said. But even then there's this moment afterwards to reflect on that and go like, well, what happens if this scales to 1,000? Like what if I had the same problem over and over again? Is there a permanent fix for this? And that's where operational change kind of comes back into play, where, pivoting in the moment is one thing, but what are the lessons learned? And obviously this podcast is called Challengtunity. It's kind of like turning an opportunity taking an opportunity to turn a bad thing into a good thing in a way.
In Lean, that's called continuous improvement. You're going to just constantly try to improve on things and look at them and go, okay, how could we make this better? You want to, we like to ask 5 whys, right? First thing when you have any kind of problem is to go, let's resolve this for the customer. In your guys' case, it could be a problem with a website. Well, let's get that fixed right away. Once it's fixed, once whatever is is resolved for them, how did that happen? And go through the journey of not blaming, not finger pointing, but where was the failure in process or system that caused that to occur, so that we can prevent that from happening 1,000 times, right? Because that just becomes very costly.
We also talked earlier about finding ways to carve out the time to do this as a discipline. Now, software can play a role in this, models can play a role in this. We talked about Lean already. EOS is also a kind of operational connection off of that. How do you make sure that you're keeping this discipline going? Like if it's not built into your role, if you were another business manager, like how would you make sure that you're looking at these business innovations and iterating over time?
You've got to structure some things. Tools like EOS have what I really like is that they're like anything, right? They're a system, rather than just happening to you. Rather than, do you come into work every day and just be like, well, wonder what today's going to give me, or do you come in with a bit of structure? Entrepreneurial operating system and traction have absolutely helped us with trying to bring structure. How many meetings have you sat in where you spend an hour, and at the end of that hour, it's like you walk away having agreed upon something, but did you really? What, who's accountable for what? And then the next week you meet again, and 1, 2, 3, not it, right? Like nobody did that. Yeah. So when you start to put that into place, when you start to put traction in place, and you walk out of a structured meeting with an agenda, with accountability, it changes. It really changes when you get back together again. The other part is to really, and traction talks about the right people in the right seats.
Thank you for bringing that up.
That helps massively, right? Like as a leader in the business, I can't be everywhere at once. I like to tell the people in the call center that I really, my job isn't to talk to the customers on the phone. I avoid it, not because I can't or won't or don't. If I have to, by all means, I'm going to take a call from a customer. But I want them to be able to do it. I want them to feel empowered and be able to take care of that, because there are things in here. There are systems and processes and failures that we've got to look at and ask those 5 whys and dedicate that time to improving. So by them, by me not having to deal with a spot that didn't come out of a carpet, because the agent can, because they're empowered to just take care of what needs to be done, then it gives me the time to be able to do that. So what I really love about it is I think the biggest thing about that right people in the right seat is GWC: get it, want it, and capacity. That is just a huge part of what I felt was really important that we took away from that book and really have begun to implement that.
I think it's time that I reread Traction. It's one of those books that I have on my desk, or beside my
somewhere
desk.
behind me on the shelf up there.
It probably is. It
right
seems
here.
like everybody bought a copy of it a couple years ago and read it really quickly, but it's there's implementers around the world even. There's a career path carved out for it. I love that you brought up the topic of staffing and equipping people, empowering people, and tying that into carving out the time to be able to actually work on the business instead of being in it. I think also brings us to the topic of systems, automations, because if we're running around doing meaningless tasks that can be automated, or implementing automations for things like tasks to equip people to know when they have to do something, efficiency.
There's even over automation, I'm sure, is also the opposite side of that challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just knowing you personally, Matt, you are just the way that you process things. You think like an engineer. You map things out in your brain. You always want to tweak and refine things. And giving your experience over the last 20 odd years, how have you guys used automations and systems and softwares? I'd imagine it's insane.
It sure can be. Absolutely. I like to always start simple. Oftentimes I start with paper because you just don't know what you're looking for, and you've got to figure that along the way. So you've got to be very intentional about it, not just putting together a paper system and then setting and forgetting, but going.
Do you ever stand in front of a whiteboard by chance?
I
a marker?
Occasionally stand up. Absolutely.
How many colors do you use?
You know what? I buy those packages with like 10 different colors from Amazon, so I can use as many as possible.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, we needed to settle something. Continue, Matt.
It drove me crazy a few years back how I was only getting the like black, red, green, maybe brown or something. There was and blue. That was it, right? Those packages.
Yeah.
I was like, no,
the
I'm
Expo
done.
markers.
I'm buying. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I need the package with all the different colors. Yeah.
There you go.
So, you can start with paper, you can start with whiteboards, you can start with, and it's got to begin to then evolve and begin to think about the different steps along the way, and then slowly implement and look back and go, okay, did that work or not? Did that work or not? We've done that with our CRM. We've done that with email. We've done that with, there's an absolute ton of processes that we've begun to automate. It was funny, actually. I've done a ridiculous amount of trials for CRMs, like you can try for free for 14 days or whatever, and then gotten the demos from the companies. And just recently I got this demo on the CRM that's kind of a field service CRM. And I asked him about, one of the things we like to do is we like to phone our customers back after a certain period of time to remind them that it's time to get cleaned again. And I asked him about being able to provide these lists out of this CRM. And he said, oh, yeah, there's a report for that. I said, so you mean to tell me that each month I'll have to, or however often I need to pull a report, export the report, and all these manual steps? No. I used to do that 10 years ago with our CRM, but not anymore, right? It's got to automatically populate a list in order to, there's some logic to this that can be pretty simple. I think one of the biggest things is dedicating a little bit of time to figuring out your logic. And people don't give enough time to that. They just kind of go, oh, yeah, here we go, we'll do this thing. And then it doesn't work, and they go, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do that ever again. And we'll just rely on our old system. But I just couldn't believe that in this day and age, that was a software as a service provider, that they're telling me, run a report.
Well, and it's funny with softwares too, because you have off-the-shelf softwares that are going to get you 85% of the way there. And then if the 15% is that essential to your business and it makes that much more of difference in your revenue or whatever, then you just have to go custom. But the great news is that as time goes on, the word custom is fewer and farther between. And it's costly. It's just so expensive. Some people I know buy it with, a lunch, but most businesses don't have that benefit, Matt. But you're talking about,
the upkeep is much more expensive.
Yes,
that's for sure.
Yes, it is.
I know that there was a period of time we were looking for project management software, and I was heading that up at the time, and I was going through platform after platform after platform, and I was just looking for 4 things, and all of them would do this one and this one, but not that one, and all of them had 3 of the 4, but never all 4 of the 4. And I was gradually pulling my hair out and surprised my hair ended up losing that battle. And we just kind of took a step back and go, okay, well, maybe we need 2 tools or something like that. And, you just have to reevaluate the problem. Sometimes the technology is great and sometimes it's just not there yet for whatever reason.
Well, I find with CRMs, back to your point, Matt, reporting is actually the biggest concern on my side. The reporting, the data analysis, the ability to see stuff in dashboards, customized dashboards, enable you to do things, right? You can pivot quickly. You can, make decisions or monitor things over a period of time. And if you don't have that stuff, especially if it's not in front of you all the time, you're just not going to see it. And it'll become something that, dies away like the dodo bird kind of thing. Like it just doesn't become part of your day to day. So, I think a lot of us understand just the overall idea of why data and analysis is important. But for you in the service industry, and for our viewers who don't know this, maybe you just never heard of Alberta Carpet Cleaning, you're not exactly a small business. You are the leader, period, in the industry. You can't go a day without seeing your trucks drive around the city or whatever the case might be. And you guys are expanding, hopefully, maybe it's a little bit secret, but hopefully expanding across the country. Who knows if maybe we'll have to edit that out. But for you in the service industry, how has data analysis impacted you? And second question to that, has there been a moment where data has been a waste, or there's just too much, or there's a scenario of analysis paralysis?
This could, I'm telling you, this could probably be a whole podcast in itself.
Let's do it.
Ultimately, without data, how the hell do you make decisions?
Yeah.
Feelings lie, data doesn't. Peter Drucker
We need to make a Challengtunity T-shirt with that on it, Jordan.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to mention Peter Drucker. That is the quote. Go for it.
Yeah, what gets measured gets managed, right? Mm-hmm. And that is just. I get reminded of that sometimes, right? Like I sometimes forget about it and got to be reminded. And it's to me like a KPI. They're like a speedometer. Without them, how do you know how fast you're going? You can feel you're going a certain speed, but do you really know? Not until the cop pulls you over and tells you your speed, and you're like, oh, I didn't think I was going that fast or that slow or whatever, right? Like you don't know. So that's, data is just so essential. There's countless things. It's just endless. The countless things that we go through every day with looking at data. And I think there's a couple of really important things to it. One is gathering it, analyzing it, understanding it. The second, part with understanding it is how do you go about understanding that? We're having a fantastic thing that we're doing right now with some people who were some leaders, newer leaders we're training up. And I have made a report card, kind of scorecard, and it gets it manually gets filled out. There's a bunch of calculations that occur, but the data that gets input into it, manual, because that is forcing them to look at the data, understand the data better, think about the data, and it's very different than just getting a dashboard showing up that shows everything. I think a dashboard is absolutely essential as well, but during that understanding, you've got to be able to know where the numbers come from, not just like, oh yeah, this is this kind of a number or that kind of a number, right? You got to know where it comes from. So there's reams of data that we have, and for many years there was a lot of things were being captured, and it goes right back to lean. What's the value? What's the value of that data? And can there be, you asked, can there be waste in data? Absolutely, an absolute ton of it. Why are you tracking it? Why are you measuring that specific thing? If you're filling out if you're getting it from a web form, and a customer prospect, if they're filling it out, the waste could be for them. Why are you capturing that piece of information? Is it necessary? Do you need it? You want to remove struggle and make it easy for them. So why are you capturing that specific piece of information, especially if you're never going to use it, which oftentimes happens, where you're just collecting so many things, and you look back and you're like, well, we never really even used that data. What's the point? I mean, data storage is one thing. That doesn't even matter these days. It's so cheap. It's all about the amount of time that's spent gathering that piece of information. There's huge waste in that component right there.
Yeah, obviously we run a lot of analytics for our clients as an agency, digital agency. Yeah. So data analysis is a huge part of what we deliver value through. Yeah, and you have problems like focusing on the noise rather than the signal where you should be putting your attention. So you want statistically viable data sets, and you want enough time, and et cetera. But you can easily fall into an analysis paralysis trap as well. How much focus on that is too much. How long or how many points of data do you need before you can make an informed decision on something? Those are, not hard rules. Sometimes you kind of got to get a sense of where those are between the different KPIs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Google and all the streams of data. Hey, I've looked at our analytics, and sometimes it is so much. It's almost better to go, well, what are the I don't know. Have we gotten away from KPIs and just we have PIs now? Because KPI this assumes that there's what, like 3, 4, 5, not 55.
There's got to be a Magnum KPI T-shirt out there.
I like it.
We're gonna have a giant meme merch store coming out of this podcast. Yeah, just every episode we come with 3 or 4 T-shirt ideas.
Yeah, Matt's gonna be on every second podcast because we're making a killing on our merch store.
Happy to help.
Well, I know that actually bridging off of that, my honest answer would be that KPIs are at this point they're a little bit dependent on what you're slicing it in from. So if you're coming from a certain department for a certain problem, there will be a KPI for that particular linear thought you're going through, and then there's a whole bunch of points in between. But even looking at a business in those kind of vertical slices, are there certain departments that you find data is most useful and other areas, or is it pretty evenly dispersed in a business like yours?
I wouldn't say it's evenly dispersed. I'd say that it's important across all departments, but it's more important in some than others. Hugely important in anything call center related. That's where we've got a lot of metrics. There's ones that I will display. There's a handful that will display up on our wall board, and then there's a whole bunch more that I'll look at the background, because what I do is, I always think you like to use your key ones to inform you, and they're just an indicator. So it doesn't mean you did good or bad. It's just saying, hey, you might have done good or bad. Maybe look into this. And then you go, okay, what's the story behind that number and how we got to it? What occurred? Was there an outlier that caused a change? Or was it actually, wow, that person's just performing incredibly well. So, you provide your key ones to people in their different departments, in AR even. You've got your aging AR. You could have a fantastic metric of days to collect, and that could be a really good number for them to monitor. Not just the amount outstanding, that's part of it too, but how many days to collect. So I think that it can be used everywhere.
I know a lot of businesses that are HR related, careers related. They rely so much on their data. We talk about different departments, but there's also another way to look at it, maybe not as internally, but externally in the service industry, where we're looking at the buyer's journey, or we're looking at, the decision-making process For example, in the world of marketing, we have the awareness, consideration, decision-making phase. Then we get into the sales department, and we now have different phases of that, pipeline. But I'd love to throw it back over to you to talk a little bit more about the latter part of that, the servicing part of it. So you sign the deal, you do the job, but how do we use data on the servicing part of it? And just how does that work for you guys? I'm interested to hear your take on it.
Without revealing any company secrets.
Yes.
Everyone
get out your notepad.
I think post-service, there's a lot of things that you can look at to go. You can look at what people were buying, frequency of different items, time between their service and their next service, or like in our case, we have a customer database with, I think it now has just over 240,000 customer files. So now, of course, there's some older data that's not as clean as now, but I can look at a customer and say, okay, what's their frequency between use? How do we maybe decrease that, and not just to get more customers, but to provide a better value? How can we help them to understand that cleaning carpets more frequently is going to help them to last longer and actually be better for, like they'll have to spend less money replacing the carpets. So how do we increase that frequency of use? We can look at all the reports to see what people's frequency is and why it might be that. Did we have to call? Yeah. Did we call them? Did they call us? Right? Having all of that data available to you helps you make massive decisions. Right now, the customer journey is actually something I'm working on mapping out using a piece of software as a service. A lucid chart to map out the journey. To go, okay, what's our current state? What's our desired state? Now, here's how we're going to use data. We're going to go, we're going to make a decision on a change. Let that ride for a couple of weeks. And then there's KPIs. When we made the decision, like there was one decision that we made today, and there were 6 different KPIs that we said, okay, these are things that we need to look at over the next 2 weeks to measure, was this successful or not? And so make the change, see what happens. Then we'll make another change, see what happens, and go along our desired state that we're creating alongside that current state, which will, the goal ultimately, right, is for customers just to feel that they're getting value out of the service that we're offering for them, and help us to stay in business and provide some fantastic employment opportunities for a really great group of people.
Well, I'm really glad that we were able to cover so much. I mean, it's quite an action-packed discussion we've had in such a short period of time. We've covered things from operations through to software, KPIs, data, et cetera. And, for our audience, which is mostly marketing professionals, but in this case, probably more our business leaders that are the main focus of value here. I really hope we can have you back, because I think this will help us to go through all sorts of different subjects if this kind of flow happens this way between us. But I know you've just joined us for the first time. Hopefully this was valuable for you as well. And Chris, I don't know if you want to.
We're going to have to do all this, but from the lens of AI next. How can we get robots to run our businesses? Yeah.
Some things, there's other things I don't know if we can replace, right?
It's very true. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really do appreciate your time. And I do echo the same thing that Jordan said. I think there's a lot of insight. And yeah. Good luck as you continue to blitz through 2023. And thanks for sharing some of your secrets, but not all of them, because I'm sure all the competitors that are listening to our podcast will try to mimic them. So.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Cheers.
Well, thanks for joining us again on another episode. We were able to cover quite a bit this day as well. Mostly focused on business modeling, which is something I'm very passionate about. So hopefully we'll get to touch base on that topic again as we go forward. And I really want to thank the community for joining and following us along the way. It seems like we're growing at a good clip here. So, hopefully that'll continue.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, and thanks to Matt for showing up today. You know, like we never had a guest just not show up when they're invited. So, we're on a roll. As we always say, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're tired of hearing us and would like to actually see what we look like, we do put this on YouTube as well. Check out all of our social medias. We're enjoying the journey, and we hope that you are able to enjoy it with us. Cheers. And end scene. Finish.